a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to Season 7, Episode 6 of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, covering the Machine Head album. Mark III's Mark II's probably most well-known album. Mark III isn't known for this album at all, except for when they covered the songs live. But I am not alone for this one. I have brought in a guest. His name is Alan Schatzberg. We're going to talk about this song. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm doing
Thanks
great,
so
my
much
friend.
for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. I want to get into your history with Deep Purple, but before that, tell us about yourself. Tell us about Rush Rash. Tell us about Second Contact. You've got quite a bit going on.
Yeah. Well, I run a business during the day. I run a custom window coverings company, and we make curtains and shades and drapes and upholstery work for the interior design trade in the New York City area. That keeps me busy most of the time, but when I need a break, I have Rush Rash with my friend Chaz, Chaz Charles, and that's a whole lot of fun once a week to just forget about everything else and talk everything Rush, which is one of my favorite bands. And then I'm also a musician. I play the drums. And I've been in a band with a group of guys that literally we have been playing since high school.
Wow.
So we have been together on and off for about 40 something years.
Wow, that's
And,
amazing.
And that fills the rest of my time, aside from my wife and my kids and dealing and the dog and all of that other
Right.
life stuff. So yeah, I got some things going on.
Well, and I want to let you guys know I have all of his links in the show notes. You can check out his band. You can check out his website. Check out Rush Rash. Interestingly, this just happened to come up in my Facebook memories. As we're recording this, it is the 1-year anniversary of the release of the episode that I was on as a guest on Rush Rash. Had a blast with you and Chaz. Could have recorded for 2 or 3 more hours with you guys.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, a year has gone by. We're going to have you on again.
I would absolutely be up for that. I find it fascinating that most of the shows I get invited to are bands that I don't know that much about. So it's great to learn. And I've learned so much about them through your show, Rush Rash, and just kind of getting into them going, okay, every once in a while, I'm just going to pick a random Rush song and go listen to it and see what I think of it. And they're a band that I don't understand how they escape me because they're right in the wheelhouse of music I like.
Yeah, they are right along with, yes, and certainly Deep Purple and that sound that's where they started.
Mm-hmm.
And then it morphed into more proggy Yes and Genesis kind of stuff, which is really the direction that Geddy and Alex wanted to take it. But they started out very heavy blues influenced, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Deep Purple, and I think Roger Glover was one of Geddy's early influences. Certainly,
Really?
the Rickenbacker bass is a sign.
Yeah. And Roger, I think, and I've said it on the show so many times, I think he's a very underrated bass player. When you really get into his playing and hear what he's doing, he's very melodic for a bass player. He's very progressive in the stuff he writes and performs, and really, really impressive. I could see where Geddy Lee might have said, there's more to this than just eighth notes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, I'm curious because I haven't had a chance to check out your band yet, but in Second Contact, what kind of music are you guys doing? Is it classic rock?
It is classic rock leaning towards progressive and heavy metal.
Oh, wow.
So we do a lot of Rush, but we do Led Zeppelin, and we do some Deep Purple. We do Perfect Strangers, and oh gosh, what's the other one on this album? Highway Star.
Oh, good.
And then we do some more poppy things. We do a lot of Journey, Styx, um, uh, you name it. We played My Sharona the other night. We do Photograph by Def Leppard, and yeah, just a whole mix of classic rock, some stuff that we've been playing literally for 40 years.
Sure. I have to say, and I wouldn't have thought this so much, but My Sharona is actually a lot of fun to play on drums. It doesn't seem like it would be when you listen to it, but it actually is a blast.
It is. It is. It's got the longest lead solo ever.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
goes on for 24 bars. Um, but it is a lot of fun. Uh, it's kind of a dark song lyrically. It's
Mhm.
all about pedophilia and whatnot. Although I understand the guy, it was a true story. The guy actually married this girl who was 17 when
Mhm.
he met her. So she was underage, but he made her a what do they call it? An honest woman.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think Aerosmith probably could have done a cover of that, and it would have fit in with their history pretty well. I learned a
Yeah.
lot about that doing the Aerosmith show that I did with Corey Morissette. Really shocked to hear, and there are an insane number of pedophile rock songs out there. When you think about like "She's Only 17" by Winger and so many others, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this is a very strange theme in music.
It is. It is. And I guess maybe hopefully, I'd like to think that when these guys were writing these songs, they were also 16 and 17,
Yeah.
talking about 16-year-old girls. But then, the band gets older and they're still playing the song,
Mhm.
talking. Now they're 30 and they're talking about 16-year-old girls.
Yeah, I like to imagine that they kind of notice that difference, but maybe they're explaining the attraction outside of the age, but the knowledge that it's wrong, like a song like Young Girl.
Mhm.
That's my hope, but I don't get that feeling very often, unfortunately. So obviously you've been listening to Deep Purple a very long time. Do you remember your first encounter, about how old you were?
Yeah, I was probably about 15 or so. And this was Machine Head was one of my first albums actually that I purchased with my own money.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, yeah, Deep Purple and I go back a very long way. And Ian Pace is very near and dear to me because I'm a lefty,
Oh,
and so he was an inspiration that he too was a lefty, and I didn't have to fight with playing the drums right-handed.
yeah.
I could be lefty, and I can switch the kit around and play lefty, and like Ian Pace and embrace it.
So do you currently play that way with the hi-hat on the right?
I do,
I
I do
did
for my whole life.
I did a very weird thing as a child. I had band in fifth grade where I played a drum pad, which was very exciting. But as a drummer with a kit, watching Ian Pace play was obviously my biggest inspiration. I mean, it started with Bobby Rondinelli from Rainbow and Cozy Powell, but
Mhm.
then when I heard Ian Pace and just heard his style and just the gentle ghost notes and that really fluid performance of his, I wanted to learn how to play like him. So I switched my kit to a left-handed setup, but played right-handed. So I played with my hi-hat hand, right hand on a right-sided hi-hat, and learned to play kick with my left hand. Dumbest thing in the world. Don't ever do that, by the way. There's really literally no reason to do it. But I actually learned to play that way for a long time. I was getting pretty good at it. And then I thought, I wonder though how I would play if I just played the way I'm supposed to play. And I switched the kit back. I'm like, yeah, this is way more comfortable for me. So I went about a year playing the completely backwards way of playing for no reason whatsoever.
That's hysterical. And you're right-handed
I am
naturally,
right-handed,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started playing, my drum teacher, when I first sat down and I said lefty, he said, "Okay, let's start switch." And then he said, "No, no, we're going to play it like this, and you're going to learn how to play right-handed."
Wow.
So I struggled with that for a year,
Hmm.
and then I fired the teacher, and I switched the kit around, and it was a revelation
Good.
because I could never, just like Ringo Starr, could never quite get around the kit that way,
Mhm.
going to the right, um, comfortably,
Right.
because I'm always leading with my left hand. I'd
Hmm.
have to lead with my right, and that's the way Ringo Starr has always played, still leading with his left hand, and coming up with those really interesting fills
Yeah.
because of it. But I switched the kit to lefty, and it like opened things up. I was like, wow, I can actually play now.
Was this like a Catholic drum school? Why was he so
No, it was
adamant?
just he was just a drum teacher in a local music store. And I don't know. In hindsight, I should have stuck with it because I could have been like um, Simon Phillips, or like from the oh, damn it, another guy that plays open-handed.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, you would know it if I said it. The Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, I don't know the name, but I know the playing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So if I had learned how to play open-handed
Hmm.
on a right-handed kit, I could have been a more ambidextrous drummer, and I wouldn't have had trouble if I wanted to sit in somewhere, or if I wanted somebody else to sit in on my kit.
Right.
That's
Oh
the
yeah.
biggest drawback.
Hmm.
I can't just get up and play somewhere.
Well,
I
Ian
gotta.
Pace, when he did his audition for Deep Purple, was on a right-handed kit.
Was he really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he was. I'm sure he was an amazing player at the very start.
Sure. It's interesting that you mentioned Simon Phillips because Tony Carey, the keyboardist from Rainbow Rising, played he plays in a band called the Mandoki Soulmates. And I interviewed him about their album, and I said, this album is amazing, but on the first song, this one particular snare, it just feels like Simon hit it too hard, and it takes me out of the song a little bit. And he goes, "I'll be sure to let him know." I went, "No, don't tell him that." So I don't know if he ever did or not, but there's a chance that Simon Phillips may not like me. Uh, but yeah,
Well,
the other thing I wanted to ask you is, are you a traditional grip or a match grip drummer?
match grip,
Okay. I
match grip.
remember an interview with Ian Pace that said for rock and roll, match grip is the only thing that makes sense because you're so limited with traditional grip. And I thought, I kind of agree with that, but have you watched Cozy Powell?
Oh, there's a ton of great heavy hitting rock drummers that play traditional grip.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can get the finesse, but you can get the power too if you
Yeah.
work on it.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was kind of an odd statement because it's one of the only things I've ever heard him say that I was like, I'm not sure if I agree with you there.
Mm.
Because in
Yeah.
general, when I listen to his interviews, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree with that. And very rare that he said anything that I'm like, I'm gonna have to call you out on that one.
Yeah,
So
I don't know why he would say that, but he plays traditional grip, and I guess maybe he switch. I've never seen them live, so I guess maybe he switches back and forth depending on what he has to do.
oh, he's match grip.
Oh, he's match grip.
He's match grip, yeah. I think
Oh, no
when maybe
kidding.
maybe in the very early days of Deep Purple, he might have played traditional, but anytime I've seen him play, it's match.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
All right.
In fact, there's a really great concert from 1972. It's in black and white. I think they might have color restored it recently, but it's from this tour. And man, I mean, his playing is phenomenal, and they do a lot of good shots of him. And they even bring out the second bass drum so they can do Fireball,
Mm.
which is a lot of fun. I made the mistake of seeing his kit set up as a single bass drum kit and learning how to play Fireball with one bass drum. So I'm doing quarter notes as fast as I can. And about two
Mm.
thirds of the way through the song, my calf is just on fire,
Oh, I'll bet.
but I refuse to give up. And then that would be the last thing I would play for about 2 days while my leg healed.
Well, I'm sure you built up some pretty good muscle tone from those quarter notes or eighth notes.
Eighth notes. Yeah. Back in the day, yes, I did. Nowadays, not so much. But yeah, I definitely put my body through it back then. So out of all the songs that you could have picked, why did you choose Lazy?
Um, well, the album in general is close to me, and I don't think there were too many others that were still left on the that were open.
Mm.
And but Lazy is such a great song. I mean, it starts out so cool, and then it just goes into this great blues jam. And the lyrics are it's kind of like an afterthought.
Right.
The lyrics, the whole song is about that great jam.
Hmm. I listened to an interview of Roger Glover's recently where somebody asked him, why do the lyrics in Lazy start so late? And he said, because that's when they start.
Yeah.
Well, hey, there you go. I mean, it's a great jam up until that point. You could almost go with no lyrics in this song, but I mean, it's over 7 minutes. It's nice when you've got a singer as good as Ian Gillan to get him in there somewhere. This would be the closest that they would come to doing an instrumental song until Perfect Stranger's bonus track of Son of Alaric, where he basically just kind of grunts at the end, and that's his only appearance on the song.
That's the whole lyric is a grunt.
It's just a grunt, yeah. But it's interesting because, you know, when you've got a band that is this good instrumentally, and Mark One certainly had some great instrumentals, but then you get a singer like Ian Gillan, it's like, when you have a band that's this good, you should do one every once in a while, but why waste your singer when your singer's that good? It's such a difficult decision.
Right. It's true. And I think this song was the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
They got to jam, and but they got Ian in at the tail end, and he makes a statement in the song too. I mean, it wouldn't be the song if we didn't have those lyrics.
Right, exactly. Now, I am going to tip my hand a little bit before we get into the song because of all the Deep Purple tracks, this is actually one of my least favorite. And so I'm going to be curious to see if I get some, you know, maybe perspective from you that turns me onto it a little bit more, or maybe I'll hear something in it that, I mean, it's a good jam. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of fun, but I guess I'm just not big on this kind of straight blues. It's just not something I gravitate towards. And I think that's what I don't like about it, because performances are there. The lyrics are there. There's a lot of great moments in it, but just like when I'm listening to Machine Head, I would say 2 out of every 3 times I listen to the album, I'm like, nah, let's just get to Space Truckin'.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I mean, no matter what, every band's going to have songs that are going to be at the bottom of somebody's list. And I'm pretty sure that before this airs, the Deep Purple podcast ranking episode will have aired already. So I don't think it's a spoiler alert for me. But yeah, Lazy is, of all the tracks, I mean, there's like 5 tracks I would put an immediate bottom of my liking of Deep Purple's overall catalog. And, you know, this is currently one of them. So let's see how it all pans out.
Okay.
All right, let's get into it, guys. Here is Lazy by Deep Purple. Okay, I'm just going to stop it right there because I love that little panning trick that they just did where it seems like the keyboard comes from behind you and then splits off to the side. That is some brilliant engineering.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of panning in this song, I noticed. And that overdriven Hammond is so freaking cool.
Yeah.
And I was reading a little bit about that earlier today. I thought it was just through some kind of overdrive pedal. I don't even know if they had overdrive pedals, but it was through a Marshall amp, a Marshall head that gave him that overdriven Hammond. He didn't run it through a standard Leslie cabinet. And it, out of all the songs, and you know, you could probably correct me, it really comes through on this song.
Well, I mean, they're featuring him by himself, so that gives him a little bit of a chance to cut through without having to separate instruments. Originally, from what I read, the experiment was with a Fender amp, and then he switched it to a Marshall. So back in the early days, it was a Fender. Then he went through the Marshall, and that's when the beast really comes alive. But from what I understand, it was a separate channel because he still had the Leslie's, but he was also running out through the thing to get through the amp to get the distortion. I'm not sure exactly how the setup worked, but I've seen it with the Leslie's on stage and the distortion. So I don't know how many outputs you have on a Hammond, but or if he ran it maybe from the Marshall then through the Leslie's. I'm not sure, but either way, it is a killer sound. But I love that he starts out with a more gentle, almost church organ type sound, or not a church organ, but just like a regular blues C3 before he kicks the distortion on. It's just a beautiful transition.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It just like it slaps you in the face.
And what's amazing is we're already 40 seconds into the song and it feels like it just started. You know, we've already gotten a lot out of John Lord. We've gone from this gentle, I wonder what he's going to do, to wow, he's blowing me away with the organ.
It's like it's larger than life. It's like in a cavern.
Yeah. And I'm trying, like, I don't remember what it was like the first time I heard it, but I'm trying to imagine people in 1972. You know, Fireball was not as well received as In Rock was, and it wasn't as heavy of an album overall because you had songs like Anyone's Daughter. But Machine Head comes out, people go to the record store, they bring it home, they put it on. What are they thinking when this comes on?
Yeah, like I don't know if there's anybody else in rock keyboarding that ran it through a distortion or a an overdrive to get that sound. I think John Lord was the first one. He was the innovator of that.
Sure.
And yeah, to hear that for the first time had to blow people away.
And I can say I have seen this song performed live, and it is unbelievable on stage.
I'll bet.
Unbelievable.
I'll bet. And I'm sure they're having a lot of fun with it.
Oh, no doubt about that. Let's see what happens next.
Yeah.
Love that. It's so powerful. And then he just goes right back down, nice and simple, kind of gentle with a little edge to it. I mean, he is just the master of sound.
Yeah. And that transition from just a into that bluesy was just so tasty.
It is, and you get kind of a little taste of what you're going to get in the song, how kind of just like jumpy and hoppy the song is with that. But up until that point, you really don't know what the song is going to be. You have no idea what direction it's going to take.
That's right. It could have gone anywhere. And then he opens the door to where it's going.
Yeah. And I can tell you when he gets to that, even when he just starts playing and people kind of have the idea it's going to be Lazy, crowd goes absolutely nuts. And then as soon as he gets to that part and the rest of them are sure he's going to play Lazy, the rest of the house, the roof just comes off. It's very well anticipated song.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure.
Okay, so before we get into the main riff here, I had mentioned on, I think it was the I'm Alone episode where we often don't get like a count in or just like straight hi-hats like this from Ian Pace. So it's kind of a treat to hear him being the live metronome from the band, but also throwing in a little bit of dynamics in there to make it fun.
Right, right. And he's a real jazzy player. And when you said he plays matched grip, it threw me because he's so jazzy and his
Mhm.
influences are so clearly jazz based.
Yeah.
And to be a matched grip player, he had to start out traditional. I'm sure he learned traditional grip.
I think
And
he
then
did, yeah, because I mean he was playing big band. So I mean big
yeah,
band it
he
would be
had to.
so inappropriate to play match grip instead of traditional anyway. It wouldn't look right and people would be like, "Oh, you can't do that, kid."
Right, right.
But it's nice, and we're getting a little bit of Richie with a more clean tone, just to kind of warm into the song a little bit, much like John did, which I thought was interesting. He's kind of following John's lead there, and I mean, obviously, he's going to kick in with some distortion here quick, but it's kind of nice to just hear him kind of creep in there and say, "Oh yeah, don't forget I'm here too."
Right, right. He just kind of sneaks in.
As Richie does.
Mm.
I don't know how it's coming through the Zoom feed for you, but I'm getting Richie pretty far in my left ear. And we're listening to the 25th anniversary remix from Roger Glover. And he's a little quiet and a little far over than I would have expected.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not getting that through here. The panning I don't think happens through
Yeah.
Zoom like it does, just listening through whatever medium.
Yeah, and I always select, optimal audio and all that, and I think it just plays mono. So
Yeah,
sorry
yeah,
about that, but yeah, if
that's
you
all
guys,
right.
for you guys who have this edition or want to listen to it, yeah, Richie's just a little further over to one side, and I think that's part of why he's a little quieter for me. It's okay. I mean, it's not unlistenable by any means, but you still get to hear everything he's doing. But it does throw the balance off a little bit for me when I'm listening. So just be aware of that when you go to listen to this version on your own. Very swingy feel on the drums, and
Oh yeah.
it's definitely good to have a shuffle on an album, and I'm glad that they do. But Ian, the way that Ian is playing this, it doesn't feel like a shuffle. It just feels like a good swing song.
Yeah. No, he's not really swinging on the ride. I mean, he
Mm.
is, but yeah, it's swing and shuffle, but with a real driving 4/4
Yeah.
feel as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to like you would expect as a drummer would play a shuffle straight, whether you're playing a single, double, or triple shuffle. But it's more like kind of like he's approaching it with more of that big band feel than he is the shuffle feel, which I really like. And his placement of the bass drums is really interesting. I've often thought maybe he was using a second, but I know he can play this with a single.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't hear double bass, um, but
Not like
but
in the
it,
straightforward like digga 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 kind of double bass, but like badam badam badam. He's doing a little bit of that, just inserting what would be the swing if he was playing it straight, but not a full on straight, or I'm sorry, a shuffle feel, but not playing the full on shuffle, just kind of like inserting here and there to give a shuffle feel. But I think that's what's
through the
creating
bass
more
drum.
of the swing than the shuffle. It's really
Yeah,
bizarre.
yeah. John Bonham was big on that,
Yeah.
playing the shuffle with his. And I play it more that way too. I was never much of a jazz player.
Mhm.
Um, uh, I'm sorry to say, but I do more. shuffle beat with my feet than with my hands, with my ride.
Same here. And my grandfather used to sit me down and make me play the Benny Goodman records, which I wish I had appreciated that more at the time. But at the
Yeah.
time, I had discovered shades of Deep Purple, and I wanted to just, play rudiments on the snare drum and do fun things like that. And so I wasn't really interested. And looking back, that's kind of one of the things that I wish I had appreciated more at the time. I think I would have been a much better drummer for it.
Same here.
Yeah. And then, of course, we're getting the rest of the guys just jamming, and it feels real good. I feel like they're in a, I know how Machine Head was recorded. There was definitely some separation the way they recorded in the corridor, but it feels like they're just in a room together, looking at each other, grins from ear to ear, just having a fun jam.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly sounds that way. Um, I know, and I was reading a little up on the recording of this as well, how they went from venue to venue because of various incidents, like the burning down of the casino,
Mhm.
and they ended up at that hotel that was closed for the winter, and there were big rooms that they could all play together in, but I don't know if Ian uh, Pace was set up in that corridor the whole time, or if there was opportunity for them to jam together.
Yeah, it's hard
Like
to
it
say
sounds,
because I don't know the pictures that I've seen, even the pictures that are in the album. I don't know which locations they're from. So obviously he would have had a slightly different setup from one place to another. I just know the bulk of the recording was done in the corridor. But in fact, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think "Smoke on the Water" was the only song they recorded in their first location before they got kicked out and went to the Grand Hotel. And
right,
then they kind of forgot about that song altogether, which is really kind of funny considering it's the song that they're most known for. But that's
right,
that's the magic of it. Sometimes that happens. It's a throwaway track. It's something that they was only put on the album by circumstance of being short a track, and interesting the way that comes out. But yeah, this album was recorded very strangely considering they had to go through a window, across a balcony, down a flight of stairs and all this to get to the truck to hear the playback, instead of just being able to listen to it through the headphones they were using to monitor the musicians.
yeah, right, right.
But
I read that also, and that led to them not necessarily being so critical with their playing,
yeah,
because they just didn't feel like going back and forth out to the mobile studio. So
right.
they said, "Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
That's okay."
and even Ian Pace has said too that if you don't get a recording on the second or third take, you should just stop and save it for another time, because after that, you're going to start analyzing, okay, this fill that I did in take two, I really like that, so I want to remember to do that again, and you're going to start overthinking it instead of just being in the moment and playing spontaneously. And I think he's probably right. That makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense. You get stale on a song,
Yeah.
um, and the first couple of takes have the most energy, and maybe the most experimenting and risk taking,
Mhm.
where you're not quite sure of where you're going or what you're going to be doing, and so the fills, as a drummer, the fills might come out more spontaneous
Yeah.
than scripted.
I think there's
And
also
yeah,
an attention span issue too, because if you're listening to the song five, six times in a row, your mind is going to start to wander a little bit. You're maybe not going to work as hard at the song. You just kind of want to get through it as opposed to being interested in it and being in that moment.
right, right, absolutely. I agree with that. If you're recording and you can't get it, step away.
Yeah,
Step away,
absolutely.
go do something else, go have lunch, and then come back fresh, and you'll probably nail it the first time.
Now, as you were telling the story there about the casino burning down, there's been all these changes in the story over the years, and people have had it like I can't believe Deep Purple burned down an island, and all these different things. So
Right.
when Nate and John from the Deep Purple podcast and Rich and I met up with Roger in Detroit in August, we were joking around about that because that's kind of the long running joke about how they burned down an island.
Right. It was all their fault.
Yes. But the most important thing, of course, is the music. So let's see where this song goes next.
Yeah.
Great soloing by Richie. And
oh, yeah.
I want to ask you, what do you think? Because obviously they'd rehearsed this song while they were writing it. It seems like Richie's solos are typically spontaneous. Very rarely does he have one that's actually planned out, like he did for Highway Star would be a rare example. But I feel like when you're doing these songs, like you have to have some kind of feel when there's this much soloing in a song. You have to kind of walk into the recording with some kind of idea, even just subconsciously what you're going to do.
I would think so. That he probably, through the jamming and the working out of the tune, he had a framework in mind of where he was going, and then he just riffed off of that framework.
Yeah,
and just stay in the right key and go for it.
And he's so fluid with his playing. I mean, if you think about equating it to the drums and you're doing, let's say, just 16th notes on the snare drum, just and how precise you need to be, right? I feel like that's how his guitar playing is. It's very precise.
Yeah. Yeah, you can hear every note. It's not crazy fast. It's really tasty. And not overdriven, not heavy overdrive.
Yeah.
Very, very clean.
Yeah, there's just a little edge to it, but really he's not drowning in distortion. He's not really drowning in reverb or anything. It's really every note is shining through.
Yeah. A little dry, a little bit of echo on there, a little reverb, but mostly pretty dry and clean and beautiful.
And I feel like that it feels more like a room mic than actually than like a reverb unit or an effect in the board that they're putting on there. It just feels like the room tone.
That's possible. Maybe it's just, it was big, a large space, a large, I don't know where he was recording it. It could have been in one of the dining rooms or ballroom.
Yeah.
And with the natural reverb.
Very interesting sound for sure.
Yeah.
Then we get to the regrouping point where they all come together before they go off on their next excursion. I'll let you take this one.
They just sound like they're having so much fun, and it's just a good feeling bluesy jam.
Yeah.
And they're just showcasing themselves so well.
They really are. And I love the thing about John Lord's style, where he just has the ability to have a little idea and just repeat it a few times, kind of hang on that and let that, sit for a second before he moves on. And then he does this incredible build. The organ gets a little bit heavier, a little bit louder, and you just feel a little more power coming through. And it just, I don't know, it just feels really good.
Right. There's a real building of energy during that keyboard solo.
You know what's funny is when Corey and I were doing Aerosmith Backtracks Aerosmith Revisited, every once in a while I would say to him, you know, Corey, kind of what I said to you, where it feels like they're just all in a room looking at each other and smiling and enjoying recording the song. And most of the time I would say that, he would pull up a video of them being in a studio and smiling at each other and recording the song. And I'm like, you can feel that. You could,
Yeah.
as musicians, we know we can go and overdub things and perfect them and, you know, ad nauseum, right? But I think there's a certain feeling of camaraderie that you can't necessarily replicate, that you need to be a band that plays together to be able to hit that level.
Yeah, I think bands, certainly those early bands, were much more comfortable playing together and creating together and going through the journey of the song together in the jam.
Right.
Now, you know, you got a piece recorded in this part of the world and a piece recorded in that part of the world, and then they kind of mush it together.
Yeah.
And it's a little sterile.
It really is. I mean, everything has to be quantized so that it's perfect. And, you know, if you don't hit a cymbal the right way, they'll just overdub. They'll copy a different one and overdub it onto that. And I don't know. It's like, and maybe I just feel like there aren't that many people that take the time to really learn their instrument anymore. And so that's kind of the reason they don't have to be that good at it to make a good sounding record. But it just feels like they're taking the humanity out of it. You know, I haven't, obviously we're on Lazy, so Space Truckin' will be the next episode. But if you listen to the very beginning of Space Truckin', you pay real close attention, they are not 100% on. They are slightly off at the very beginning. And nowadays, all that would be corrected. And the humanity, the reality, the realism of it would be gone.
Right. The and that was what Ian Pace had said. It wasn't perfection, and they didn't strive for that, but they wanted authenticity.
Yeah.
And you know, we're humans playing the music. We're not machines, robots. There's gonna be a flub.
Right.
And it's natural.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and tell me if you disagree, because you've been a Purple fan for a long time, but I think one of the biggest things that this band has going for them is their honesty. They never tried to be anything. They were just, here's what we wrote. We like it. I hope you guys do too.
Mm-hmm. And it just happened to be really great music.
Yes. The only time they came close to that was, I would say, during the Slaves and Masters thing, when they went for the black leather look and trying to be, you know, have an image in that. But apart from that, I mean, if they didn't feel like smiling in a photo, they didn't smile. If they felt like smiling, they smiled. They weren't trying to have an image or be anything except not to be something.
Right. They weren't posers.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I think that honesty is one of the things that's the biggest attraction to me. Aside from the fact that they all happen to be damn good musicians.
Yeah, and the honesty comes through.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're at the regrouping point again after we've gotten a great solo from Richie and a great solo from John. Let's see what happens here. And I should point out, I feel like Roger is a little limited in this song because he's really kind of locked in on that walking bass line. He cuts through every once in a while, but I feel like at least through the solos, he's being very supportive. And every once in a while, he'll do that. He'll have songs where he is all up and down the neck, and then he'll have songs where he's really just being that foundation for people to solo and kind of be over the top. But since this song is mostly soloing, I guess that kind of fits.
Yeah. He's just laying down that blues bass rhythm and keeping it moving.
Exactly. Well, let's see what happens next. Now we just get Roger switching to something else behind the vocals there. He's playing the shuffle.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
And Ian Pace's bass drum is playing the shuffle. I hear it a lot.
Yeah. They've locked in on that to back up the vocals, which it's nice to hear from Ian. We get to about 4 minutes and 23 seconds or so before he comes in, which for a Deep Purple song where so many of their songs are like, okay, here's the riff, start the vocals. It's like they took all that time and said, we're just going to save that for lazy.
They were lazy.
But he's got a good, strong vocal on this one. I love his vocal kind of has a little bit of a mellow tone on this one, don't you think?
Yeah, he's laid back until later in the verses.
Yeah.
But he's starting out laid back for sure.
And I think that's just it. I think he's doing kind of the same kind of build that John Lord did, where he's like, I'm going to start off gentle. I'm going to kick your ass, but I'm not going to do that just yet. We're going to warm up to that.
Yeah, and I think that's good planning, and it's in keeping with the way the rest of the song has developed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the sound of it too, just the balance they have of instruments and backing up, I think it's really well rounded because there's nothing that seems lacking in this song at all, but there's also nothing that seems overplayed. It's like they don't try to take over each other's territory. They're very respectful, which if you've ever seen blues live, this is one of the things I love about it is that everybody gets a chance to solo in a song. If it's an improv jam, everybody gets their time. They just kind of nod to each other and everybody else says, I'll support you during your solo time. You're going to support me during mine. And we're just going to keep this going until everybody's had their shot. And I feel like there's no musical competition in this song. It's when it's your turn, John, you can solo. When it's my turn, Richie, I'll solo. Everybody else support.
Right. That's true. It's a straight blues jam.
If you're drowning, you don't clutch no straw. No, no. If you're drowning, you don't clutch no straw. You don't want to live, don't want to cry no more.
Killer harmonica solo from Ian.
Yeah. Oh, is that Ian Gillan?
It's Ian, yeah.
Playing harmonica? Wow. Rock and roll harmonica. That's got to be one of the earliest incorporations of harmonica in a heavy metal song.
It could be. Right? And it's nice when he breaks it out. He doesn't do it very often, but there's a few songs where he'll bust out the harmonica. But I love what he's playing. I mean, it has real emotion to it. And a great feel, but he also doesn't lose the groove of the song at all. No, not at all. It's all driving, and just like the guitar solo and then the keyboard solo, that harmonica solo fits right in there. Very much so, and I feel like Roger's upping the ante on the walking bass line a little bit. So I have to think maybe he was kind of doing the same thing, saying, "All right, I'll start out simple. I'll just play the basics, but as the song goes on and the jam gets bigger, I'm going to start playing bigger too."
Right. Absolutely. And it's called for.
One thing I've noticed doing these episodes that I just never really picked apart before was that they are really good at doing builds where they are on a first verse versus where they are in a final verse are really two different levels. And they just have this amazing way of building without you realizing they're even doing it.
Well, that's the mark of a good song. It can whip you into a frenzy without you even realizing it.
Exactly. Excellent. Just masterful writing and performance. Now, it does sound, and I could be wrong, but it sounds like Ian's vocals are double tracked.
I was thinking the exact same thing, and I believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear it more in the scream. It's almost like a harmony.
Mm-hmm.
The basic vocal, he's just double tracking, but there's something about that scream, and maybe he's just a little bit off in the overdub, but it sounds like this interesting vocal harmony happening.
Yeah, and I think that really adds a lot of depth to the sound too, because I mean, just a scream would be good. You know, he's just letting out his emotion, and that's fine. But I think this particular recording technique really brought out a lot more.
Yeah. Well, double tracking vocals has been a big thing over the years, I suppose still now, but now they just kind of play the same recording over it. I guess.
Now they just copy paste it all. Yeah, because I mean, why pay your singer to be there if he doesn't need to be there, right?
Right. But double tracking vocals was a popular thing.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you had singers that could do a really good job of knowing exactly when they started and stopped so that they could dub it without sounding like they were dubbing it. Like to give you the sound without being like, oh, okay, we hear him stop on that word 2 different times. I mean, it's perfection unless he doesn't want it to be perfect.
Right. And then he drifts a little bit to give it that harmonizing feel.
Yeah.
But that scream, that double tracked scream is just great.
Yeah, it really is. Just amazing the control that he has over his voice.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a really unique singer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously he was blessed with a great singing voice and very powerful lungs and all that, but the way he learned to use it is just to be able to go from a band like Episode 6 to a band like Purple doing the kind of stuff they were doing on In Rock, absolutely incredible. And I don't know what he was expecting, because the band he was joining was really kind of a psychedelic band. It wasn't until In Rock when they changed. So it wasn't until after he said, yes, I want this gig. So I don't know if there was discussion of, well, the next album we want to be heavier. Are you in? Or, you know, what his expectation was, but he certainly adapted incredibly quickly.
Yeah. It could have been his influence that moved the band in that direction.
Very well could have, yeah. I mean, I know that there was an inclination to that because they got rid of Rod Evans because they didn't think he could go where they wanted to go. So I think they had an idea, but I don't know if their idea was in depth or as heavy as In Rock turned out to be, because there really was nothing as heavy as In Rock before In Rock turned out to be. But I think sometimes the people that you work with, when you see their skills and go, oh, we can use that can bring out that kind of intensity in an album. You know, if you can't really plan an album you don't know you can pull off.
Yeah. Yeah. Each member is going to bring their own flavor. And this incarnation of the band, what do they call it?
Mark II.
Group 2? Or?
Yeah, Mark II.
Mark II. I think is just one of the best. I always liked Ian Gillan. And you know, the rest of them are it's the core of the greatest band.
Yeah. Yeah. I have just been enthralled with them since I think I first heard them when I was probably around 10. And ever since then, it was like, all right, I'm in 100%. You know, now a lot of people say for some reason they look at, because it's MK2 or MK3, they call it Mach instead of Mark, and that's a speed.
Right.
Which,
Mach 2, Mach 3.
Mach 3. And I'm like, yeah, they're not going that fast.
No.
I feel like it's a rock song now. I feel like starting with that solo, they've upped the ante. It switched from a blues song to a rock song.
Right. Right. But it still has the blues shuffle feel, that bluesy feel, that blues progression feel. But yeah, he kicked it up a notch with that solo.
It's almost like he said, all right, enough of this crap, let's go, and just took off. And his playing, I love how he's hanging on that one note, just that da da da. He has kind of like the way that John does his short parts that repeat really quick. Richie has a way of just hanging on that one note that I've always appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tastiness. It's not about filling the space with as many notes as you can.
Yeah.
It's, making one note sing is much tastier than how many can you fit in a bar.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Give me melodic over speed anytime, and I will be perfect. That's why I like a lot of bands when they go in that shredder direction, even with a band like Whitesnake, where I was like, there came a point where they started changing away from that rhythm and blues more to the hair metal kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm not enjoying these guitars as much as I used to. They're trying to show, it felt more like showing off as opposed to playing for the song. And I guess I'm more a playing for the song kind of person.
Right. I appreciate a good groove more than, speed.
Yeah.
And intensity. Just give me a good groove that builds and builds on itself and gets powerful over time, and it takes you to a different place.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, when I look at the list of songs that you guys do, the bands that you listed, they all play that way.
Yes.
So it's kind of not surprising you guys gravitated towards that because it's what you grew up with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is the music of my youth.
Yeah, mine too. And I will say, I am definitely finding a greater appreciation for this song. I'm really glad you're here to kind of show me some of the things that I hadn't really noticed in it before. Thank you so much.
Oh, hey, thank you.
All right.
It's great to revisit this song myself. I haven't heard it in a long time.
Yeah. It's easy when there's albums that you're so comfortable with that sometimes you kind of forget to just visit them every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been so wrapped up in Rush with the Rush Rash thing that I'm really kind of pigeonholed in all Rush all the time. And to take a break from that and listen to some other stuff is good. It helps me keep it fresh.
Sure. And I mean, like when I was doing the Uriah Heep podcast, that was 2.5 years. And so I was doing 4 shows a week. So I didn't really have that much time to listen to music outside of what I was recording for podcasts. And then, of course, I still had the Haskin cast that I was doing where I'm still doing an album a week or, different review of different stuff. And I'm like, I just did not have time to really sit down and enjoy music outside of what I was podcasting about. So I feel that exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. You get trapped in that space, and especially 4 episodes a week you were doing of Uriah Heep.
Yeah.
So I mean, you wouldn't have time to devote to anything else. Well, and you were that's what you set out to do.
Right.
You went on a journey with Uriah Heep, and 2.5 years later.
I'm doing a little bit better now because I go for at least a short walk every day. So I just, I have some music on my phone or I'll bring my iPod and at least get some stuff in my ears other than what I'm podcasting about, which is nice. So it's kind of just finding a little bit of balance in that. But even with that, it's hard to find time to just enjoy music just for the sake of enjoying music sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's get
and
back
that's what you set out.
Yeah.
You started out this journey, this podcasting thing for the love of music and to enjoy the music.
Yeah. Isn't it ironic that the thing that I started out to enjoy it with then caused me to not enjoy it?
Right.
But at least I will say, at least I get to share that experience with other people, albums that they may not have heard of, or albums that they may have forgotten, or, songs that maybe they didn't really give a chance because it's just where they were at when they heard it the first time. And I have had so many people come to me and say, I didn't know about this album, or I forgot about it. I'm so glad that you brought it to my attention. So it definitely has had an incredible benefit in what I'm doing. But there is a certain trade-off or sacrifice to be able to do what we do to make it happen.
Yeah, if you want to be consistent with the shows, and you have to devote the time, and so many only so many hours in a day.
Exactly. Well, let's get back to the song. We're getting close to the end. We've got a little less than a minute to go, but it's gonna get crazier from here.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get to the ending, because I have something to say about that, I love just the way that they bumped up the energy on this passage here. I mean, they know that they're heading towards the end. This is their last chance to kind of explode a little bit. And even just that syncopated da, 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 that we're getting from Ian Pace with Richie, I mean, it's just masterful.
Yeah. Well, that's like bringing it home. That's that's the wrap up. And then of course into the ending. But Roger Glover is really ripping it in this last few verses.
Yeah.
Few bars. He's really all over and just running up and down the neck. Sounds great.
I think that's the maybe one of the things I don't like about this song is the fact that he didn't get a solo in it. Maybe not a long solo, but even just, 8 bars or something would have been really nice to have them back him a little bit, because he does have that melodic side to him. I think he could have come up with something really tasty. That's one drawback. I mean, if you think about like Pictures of Home, that little solo he gets in Pictures of Home, something like that would have been nice for a song like this. But, I mean, it's okay that they didn't give him that, but I think that would have been cool.
It would have been. And, like a traditional blues or jazz quartet or quintet, everybody gets a solo. The drummer, the bass player, the keyboard player, the guitarist or the saxophone or whatever whatever's up there. But in this case, the rhythm section stayed the rhythm section. And they created the base for everybody else to run off of.
Yeah, it's interesting now that you say that. I'm kind of realizing that there are not a lot of, grandiose fills or anything from Ian Pace in this. He's doing some nice transitional stuff, but he's not doing fills like he does in some of the other songs where they're pretty intricate and in depth and, almost an entire bar long. He's really sticking to the foundation on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, simple rolls on the snare drum, some flam. I don't know the terminologies. After 45 years, I don't know the terminologies.
Yeah, they're just words.
But but pretty straightforward stuff.
Yeah, which is
just
pretty
keeping
rare.
It solid.
Yeah, it's pretty rare for him to do that. But I think it's the nature of the song. I think if it had been any other song, he probably wouldn't. But maybe just for this one, because it is such a straight blues song, to really just do the supportive thing.
Yeah, well, and based on the story that I read, where they had 3 weeks to produce this album, and all of a sudden that 3 weeks got eaten away, and now they have less than 10 days.
Yeah.
They probably just threw this song together.
It could be. And that's, I think maybe that's what's great about it, is because it is so spontaneous. They didn't, and I know that a lot of the songs that they've said over the years, well, we wrote that in the studio, we wrote it and we recorded it 2 hours later, and the best songs are written in 20 minutes. And maybe that is kind of one of their secrets, or especially for a song like this that needs to feel natural and spontaneous, can't be a song that was rehearsed 50 times before they go to record it.
Right. And Ian Pace probably didn't have the luxury to sit back and figure out what fills he's going to do and what to put where. He just had to play the blues.
Yeah.
Play the blues for 7 minutes and get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But either way, I think the benefit of all of that was that we got a pretty kick-ass blues tune.
Yeah. Yeah. All spontaneity and all the greatness of that spontaneity.
Now, the one part of the song I will say was likely planned is the final. I can't even speak anymore. The final part of the song, which we're going to get into. But the reason that I have something to say about it is I remember when my brother and I used to jam, he on guitar and me on drums. This was always the last thing that we played. Not Lazy, just this part of Lazy, because it's like the perfect concert ending.
Right.
It gives you an excuse to end a song and not fade it out. And I think if this song had faded out, I don't think it would be as good.
No, it had to have a traditional blues ending.
Yeah.
Of course it did.
For sure. So let's check that out. Love that triple cymbal hit at the end.
Yeah.
I always like
so
to.
Cool.
I always appreciated that Ian's playing the buzz roll, but then he plays harder. He just has a nice little buzz roll going. Then just all of a sudden it's a harder buzz roll, and I've always thought that was a really cool trick.
Yeah, well, it's a buzz roll into a double stroke and then into a heavy single stroke. Mm-hmm. Powerful.
Yeah,
it's a great transition and so smooth, but that's him.
Yeah.
Smooth from buzz into power single stroke, so cleanly.
Yeah, but I feel like
I
the
wish
end.
I could do that.
Oh, you can. I used to in my earlier days be very intimidated by other drummers, and then I realized something one day. If they can do it and they're human beings, I'm a human being and I can do it. I might do it my own way, but there's nothing that a human being can do that I can't do. And then when I realized that, I stopped being intimidated by other drummers. I might be impressed by them and some of the things that they come up with, but I've never been intimidated since. So if you just work on it and, really focus on it though, you can do it.
Yeah. And it's not always about how fast you can play.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing for the music. If you're playing in a group, in a band, you play for the music. You don't overplay. You don't step on people. And if you have a certain limit to your abilities, just stay in time.
Yeah.
Stay in time. Throw a little tasty fill in, and you'll sound like $1 million.
Right. And Ian Pace, the human metronome, because they're not recording to a click track, that's the drummer and the bass player keeping you on time through that whole song.
Right. That's right. Yeah, they didn't have click tracks back then.
And that's another thing that I think we lose a little bit, because naturally as a drummer, you're going to speed up now and then and kind of just check yourself and go back into the right tempo. But you're going to have that. And I feel like we do get some of that on these songs. But nowadays, again, it's like you're off the click, start over, and you lose another part of that just natural ability or natural inclination to play the song the way it feels.
Right. And there's a loss in feel of the songs. Music, and as I said earlier, music is so sterile now. I don't really bother with much contemporary music.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and it's funny that I would say that, because when I was younger, I always felt that I would listen to whatever music is coming up and whatever is new. But I find myself, sticking with stuff that was recorded before, I don't know, 1990, except for a little bit of grunge. I liked the grunge, the Pearl Jam and the Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden.
Yeah.
I really dig that stuff. But that stuff it harkens back to early rock and really raw and grungy and dirty
Mm-hmm.
and real.
Yeah, you brought up a really interesting point because that's kind of around the time that modern music lost me as well. There were a handful of songs during the grunge era that I liked, but overall, that sound, and I think a lot of it was the vocalists because they felt like, well, I'm being paid, so I guess I'll sing the song, as opposed to here's something I'm feeling, here's what's on my mind, here's something I want to share, here's something I've got to let out. Whereas I think in the 70s and into the 80s, I feel like it was more about we're writing songs we feel versus I wrote a song that's going to get played on the radio.
Mm.
And I did a panel on the Haskincast podcast about grunge music with two people that loved grunge and two people that didn't. And I was one of the ones that didn't. And we just kind of, they gave us a playlist and they said, okay, go away, listen to these. We'll reconvene, see what you think. And I found some stuff that I liked, but overall, there's very little of it that I know of. And I have to admit, I stopped listening to it fairly quickly because I wasn't turned on by it. But there's very little that I know of that I would like ever crave listening to again. Some of it was a little too political for me, and I'm not typically into that kind of thing. I just want to enjoy music. I want to enjoy what I'm hearing and feeling. It's one thing to make a statement now and then, and it's another thing to be a statement. And I feel like they were really tapping into that. We need to have an identity, and that identity is going up against the man. But it didn't feel like they meant it as much as they just said it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it wasn't like late 60s, early 70s going up against the man, really making a statement against whatever was happening at that time, war and whatnot. But you didn't get into any Soundgarden, Chris Cornell?
A little bit. I'm trying to remember. Spoon Man was pretty good. I know there was another song on that album that I liked, and I can't think of it. Funny enough, I actually owned that album, but I think I got it through Columbia House because I ran out of. They only had so many things I wanted, and I really wanted those. So I'm like, all right, Soundgarden's really popular, and I'll probably, one of my bands will probably play a song off of it. So I think I got that album. And but yeah, no, not a huge. I liked his voice. I thought his voice was good. But I just couldn't really get into their music that much.
That was one band that I really liked through that era.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of it, not so much. I wasn't a big who's the guy that died?
Oh, Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, I wasn't a big Kurt Cobain fan. But Soundgarden had something that really grabbed me. Well, maybe it was his vocal.
Yeah, there were a couple of songs that Nirvana had that I really liked. I mean, when "Smells Like Teen Spirit" first came out, I'm like, wow, this is a great song. But it didn't feel like a lot of the songs that I think of when I think of grunge. I think more of like Pearl Jam and the "I'm gonna sing and I don't care." It just has that feel to me. But I think Nirvana had something a little more energetic. And I think of songs like "Smells Like Teen Spirit" or "In Bloom" was another one I really liked. But after that, I was kind of like, all right, I'm kind of done with these guys. Didn't really interest me too much after that. And nothing against their music. It just didn't resonate with me.
Right. Pearl Jam was not one also that I really gravitated to. For whatever reason, except for the music on the radio, and it was fine.
Yeah.
But I was never a huge fan. But Soundgarden, I liked.
Yeah, I felt sometimes with some of the songs, I'm like, God, it just feels like it's going to take so much energy to turn the dial and listen to a different song that I don't want to bother. It just kind of like that's what it was. I think is the music just kind of drained me emotionally. It sucked out any joy in the room, and unless you really want that, if you're like in a moment of depression and you just need that to let it all out, it's not what I would want to hear.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where the music metal music has gone to, with the death metal and speed metal and all of that. I I I don't know where any of that comes from or goes to. It just doesn't touch me at all.
Yeah, I went through a very short speed metal phase, very short.
Mm.
And, but I think the other thing too is around that time. I mean, you're thinking about when grunge was coming in, rock was turning into a guitar show. And that's when bands like Whitesnake, who I was a huge fan of, started to lose me a little bit because I just didn't care for the flashy guitar solos. And it just, I couldn't connect with it. When you look at older Whitesnake, very much like Deep Purple and Rainbow and Michael Schenker, where you're getting guitar solos that have feeling, they're playing for the song. Whereas
Right.
you get to that point where it's like, look what I can do.
Right. Right. You have Eddie Van Halen and Yngwie Malmsteen and all of those other guys,
Yeah.
the Flash guys, except for Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne's guitar player. He, in his short 25 or 26 years, he really made a huge mark on rock music and metal guitar music.
Yeah.
He was a virtuoso.
I would agree with that. And it's kind of like Hendrix, he died so early. You just wonder what would he have gone on to do?
Right, right. And it's such a shame that all of these so talented people that just burn out. Well, Randy was a tragic accident,
Yeah.
but they burn out and their flame is so bright.
Yeah.
I guess it's just not sustainable.
But then, it's like, would they continue to be the icon they were had they not died? Because I think that's part of why people look at them as icons, is because it's a tragic thing that they're not with us anymore. And look at these things that they did, these handful of things. Like Jimi Hendrix did not actually put out that much music, but the stuff
No.
that he did is so impressive and so well known. But had he not died, would they have just become mainstream forgotten albums? Is it that they're iconic because he tragically died? I mean, there is that factor to these musicians.
Mm. I I don't know if Hendrix was like a painter, like Picasso or whatever, where they come much more popular after they're gone.
Yeah.
I suppose that happened with Hendrix, but he was so unique
Yeah.
at the time,
Mm-hmm.
1967, 68, with what he was doing with the guitar. It was like nothing nobody had ever seen before.
Right. And he was so humble about his fame and his influence. I mean, he was a very shy person. And any
Mm.
interview that I've ever seen with him, you can tell he just feels so awkward anytime somebody compliments him. And I really admire that, because with somebody as big as he was at the time and how quickly it happened, that could have gone right to his head. I mean, his ego could have been ridiculously stadium sized. And yet he was just incredibly humble about it all. And I like that, because I think that's what keeps musicians wanting to get better and wanting to create more. If you feel like you're on top of the world, where's the reason to strive to do better? Where do you think you can go?
Right, right, right. And now that you have it all, well, what else are you going to give if you don't continue to strive for betterment and
Exactly.
and innovation? And that's the thing about Rush. They constantly were trying to become better musicians and change up their style and their sound, and it evolved so well over the years.
Yeah.
For better or worse, not everybody likes every genre
Mhm.
of Rush catalog, but you have to appreciate the group for wanting to continually push
Yeah.
to get a different sound or a different um, feel out of their music.
Absolutely. And interestingly, just yesterday, a video popped up on my Instagram of Geddy Lee talking about the integration of the Mini Moog into Rush. And I thought this is really fascinating how he just went so far out of his way to find sounds that were different and to find something that was easy to learn that he could work with, but yet quickly make something unique and really add to the band's sound. And I thought these are guys that I really am impressed by because they're constantly looking for innovation. They don't want to just crank out album after album. They want it to mean something. And I really respect that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they were always adding different sounds, different things to create what they wanted to do as a three-piece live. They always strove to be able to recreate the sound live, and the adding of all of the different electronic elements gave them that ability to create new sounds and go in different directions, but still create an amazing live performance and very, very true to the album.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's one thing that John Lord had said in an interview one time is he felt fading out a song was cheating because you can't play it live. You know, if you're live,
Right.
You have to end it. You have to definitively end a song. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, that obviously is a difference between the studio and the stage, but I kind of get where he's coming from on that.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why, where the whole fade out came from, and why they would choose to do that instead of have a definitive end to a song. And some of the fade outs on classic rock albums, if you turn the volume up as they're fading, there are some really amazing jams. And they probably went on for a number of minutes after the fader was already down, you know?
Yes, they have. And I call that feeling of wanting to know what happens after it fades out. I call that chasing the party. Because if it's feeling good and I want to know where they go after that, I want to follow that party that they're having, you know? On some of the remastered editions that Roger Glover re-released, there are versions of the songs that some of them do have that extended play out beyond where we go with the fade out. And it's fun to hear. Some of them stop almost immediately after where they faded it out, so you can see why they chose that point. And other ones, I'm like, why didn't you just let it play for another 30 seconds? Because there's a lot of cool stuff here. You know, it's really fascinating, but it also feels weird because we get to know these songs as they were presented to us 40 years ago, right? And anything that's different from that then starts to feel weird.
Right.
Because it's not part of our memory of that song.
Yeah, and we're hearing a lot of that these days. Old tracks, you know, lost tracks and alternate tracks. And there seems to be a whole big industry these days of resurrecting the alternate mix, the one that didn't make the album the first time.
Right. And part of me, if you have a band that's big and has a huge following, I think part of that can be for the fans. Part of that, I think, is also a record company cash grab because they know that if you're releasing material that's been unheard or, you know, alternate mixes or alternate takes, like people are going to eat that up. And so it kind of makes sense from a cash standpoint to do that if you're the rights holder. I shouldn't blame the record company because it's really whoever holds the rights to it and whoever wants to back that and release it, which isn't always a record company. But I also get the, hey, we're holding on to this stuff that I bet people would love if they got a chance to hear it. And I can appreciate that side of it too, you know.
It's like the annuity that the band has held on to all these years.
Right.
And now it's paying off for them, dividends.
That's an excellent way to put it. Before we wrap up, I meant to play this before we started the song, but I have a clip from, of course, Rockline. This goes back to 1985 when they were on, and somebody called in a question and asked them about Lazy.
To Staten Island we go. Sorry to cut you off there. 102.7 WNEW-FM is our station where Dan Carlo has the night service. And Craig, you're on.
Hello, I got a question for Roger.
Yeah.
Hi, Roger. How you doing? Is this Craig?
Greg. I'm Greg from Staten Island.
Hi, Greg. What's the question?
How you doing? I'm waiting for March 9th. I'm going crazy here. And I want to know, are we going to hit 117 dBs? And possibly, are we going to hear Lazy?
Well, in answer to the second question first, there's a distinct possibility you'll hear Lazy. In answer to the first question, this is the first.
We never play that quietly, do we?
Yeah.
No, we never turn down to 117 these days.
We're aiming for 150 plus.
Oh, look out! Look out now.
So yeah, I can say that was for the Perfect Strangers tour. I did see them on that tour, and I did see them play Lazy, and it was fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was
great. WNEW. That was my station.
Was it really? Oh, wow.
Back in the day. Yeah, that's in New York, the Rock of New York.
Nice.
Scott Muni, Scotzo, and Carol Miller, and all the old time DJs. Some of them who are still on like the classic rock on Sirius.
Yeah,
Carol Miller's still around.
Very cool. I had WRIF in Detroit, and that's where I saw them on that tour, was at Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, where the Red Wings played. And let me tell you, that place was packed. I don't think there was an empty seat in the house, and that is a huge stadium, or, it was before they demolished it. But great show. Girls' School opened, which was kind of a odd opening act, but I don't think anyone really cared. They were just there to see Purple.
Yeah, right. And what a great comeback with that album.
Yeah. It was such a natural album for them to make. I think, they weren't, nothing was relying on technology. They weren't doing anything too crazy, too progressive. It was just a good, straightforward album, which I think for them to come together after all those years and after all the fighting and everything else, to just come back and make a solid album was exactly the right thing for them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And Perfect Strangers, and I know we'll get into that podcast at some time in the future.
Yes.
That's a great groove song, and my band plays that, and it's just it just grooves and carries you through.
Yeah. I really love that Egyptian scale that they go to at the end, and that just is a drummer that is such a fun passage to play. Yes, that little proggy different time signature thing is very cool. It's even better when I nail it. Well, there is that. I will say, and I was thinking about this a while ago, most of the Mark II era and Mark III era stuff with Purple was in 4/4 or 3/4. Every once in a while you get a 6/4, but it really wasn't until Richie left and Steve Morse joined the band when they really started to experiment with time signatures. And I think that's just the nature of Steve's writing. But when you listen to an album like Perpendicular and you see how much Ian Pace's playing changed to adapt to that style of music, really impressive how quickly he jumped in on that. Interesting. I don't know that era, and I have to go explore it. And Steve Morse is a powerhouse. I saw him in the 80s with the Dixie Dregs. Oh, yeah. And that was really like proggy jazz fusion type stuff, and just great stuff, great players. And super nice guy, too. I had the pleasure of meeting him at the NAMM show a few years ago, and just very generous, very friendly. Just seems to genuinely love being a musician and being around people that love music. And he's so creative, definitely. I was not familiar with him until he joined Purple. And then I went back and started listening to some of the other stuff he had done. I'm like, man, this guy's whole life has just been as an amazing musician. Yeah. And the drummer from the Dixie Dregs, also a phenomenal drummer, Rod Morgenstern. Yeah. Another lefty. That's right. I was working with a band in Colorado that opened for Winger when he was playing with Winger, and I got to see him live and do an incredible solo. And I thought, he's kind of wasted in this band. Winger is a little straightforward compared to what this guy's capable of. Now, that doesn't mean he should necessarily be in a band that does more progressive stuff. he just has the capability to do it. You know, he might just be happy at that time just playing some good old rock and roll.
Well, it pays the bills.
And sometimes you got it.
That's right. And the Dixie Dregs, he got his yayas out on the dreg stuff.
No doubt. He might have said, you know, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to kind of tone it down a little bit. But interestingly, Winger was a band that, I mean, obviously I knew from their early songs, but I did not realize at the time that I had seen Kip Winger playing bass with Alice Cooper when I saw Alice Cooper live in Detroit on Halloween night.
Oh, wow.
Which was an amazing show, but I had no idea who Kip Winger was, wouldn't have known him from any other bass player at the time, would have never guessed he would go on to be the, you know, the musician and the heartthrob and everything else that he was. Really cool to see him making a comeback and putting out a new album. So I'll be curious to see what that sounds like and what happens to his career as he goes on.
For sure. Yeah, they carry on.
They do. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I've really enjoyed having you on, and I look forward to people hearing it and checking out Lazy. I have to say, I kind of have a newfound appreciation for this song.
Well, that's great. And so do I. Just listening to it a few times the past few days. What a great song. So much fun to listen to and to talk about. And it's really been a pleasure. Yes. Scott, and I appreciate you having me on.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We'll see you again in another episode. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to maybe coming back on Rush Rash at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's I can't believe it's been a year.
I know. So, time just flies so much. It really does. Yeah. So guys, check out Rush Rash. Check out Second Contact. I've got all the links in the show notes for you. Thank you very much. We will see you guys in the next episode. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode and thanks for listening.